ANEC Sports presents a Frick Media Productions, created by the founder and editor at the ANEC Network, Sam Frick. This is the opening drive. Welcome to episode 3 of the opening drive. My name is Sam Frick. I'm the founder and editor at ANEC Sports, covering schools across Northeast Indiana and Elkhart County. That includes our folks down in Marion, Indiana, and the surrounding areas there. We cover football here in this area of the states, high school football, looking at what took place last week, what is to come for this coming Friday, and previewing what the slate of games across the way. And so, let's go ahead and kick things off with what took place last week, and particularly with the ACAC. So we begin with the ACAC, and when you look at the conference right now, Bluffton, Heritage, Southern Wells all sit at 1-0 in conference play. Bluffton Heritage undefeated on the season so far at 3-0. Southern Wells with their first win since 2023. First win against the ACAC since 2019. We'll talk about Southern Wells shortly here. But let's first talk about one of our games of the week from last week, which was the South Adams Starfires at the Bluffton Tigers, where Bluffton pulled off a heroic, dramatic, entertaining 44-41 home win over the South Adams Starfires, where both teams simply were just firing at all cylinders, particularly in the passing game of sorts. Both teams combined for over 800 yards of passing on that game. Both teams recorded multiple touchdown passes, 9 in total, in fact. There were some mistakes on both sides, obviously, but when you look at that matchup, obviously both teams could come away saying we did something well in that game, and we can build upon it from there. Even for South Adams, a team that lost a heartbreaker last week, now they sit 1-2 on the season, 0-1 in conference play. You got to be saying to yourself, man, if we can just clean up some things here and there on both sides of the ball, that's a win right there for us at South Adams. You know, Titus Lehman, one of the positives for South Adams, 39-58 on the passing game officially, 411 yards, 6 TD passes, 2 picks. You had Derek McCain, 16 catches for 191 yards, 2 touchdowns. So McCain, obviously one of the top receivers all time at South Adams in receptions, receiving yards. So McCain continued his tremendous senior year for the Starfires. He had Wes Somerset and 9 catches for 125 yards. Did not get a touchdown. But obviously the passing game, as you would expect from an air raid attack like South Adams, did a lot of good things on Friday nights at Bluffton. Obviously, they had some trouble running the football. They didn't run the ball a lot. Bluffton obviously ran the ball more often. They ran 33 times for 141 yards. South Adams was 15 times for 41 yards. They obviously had their troubles moving the football and whatnot on the ground, but the passing game obviously had success. The turnovers are going to come back to bite South Adams in this game, and they did. They had 2 picks and then 2 lost fumbles, if I recall, in that contest. But obviously for South Adams, a lot of good things they can build upon for their next game coming on Friday when they host the Heritage Patriots. We'll talk about Heritage in a matter of moments. As for Bluffton, Aston Best, another monster game for the junior, where he completed 15 and 23 passes for 194 yards, 652 completion percentage, 3 TD passes, QBR 131.2. And he also ran for another 43 yards on 12 carries, and an additional touchdown. Cooper Craig, 14 carries for 78 yards, 2 TDs. Obviously, Bluffton's offense was explosive as you would expect the Bluffton Tigers to be, but they had some issues as well with taking care of the football. They had 3 fumbles as well. So they had multiple fumbles. They had their issues taking care of the football as well. It was kind of one of those games where both teams made their fair share of mistakes, but obviously when we look back in this game, Bluffton, they were the team that had the last laugh in that contest with 30-some seconds left in the game. It was Aston Best with a touchdown pass to Aaron Streveler to win this ball game. Eventually, in the end, was a 22-yard pass with about 30 seconds on the contest. And then you had Marshall Gerber picking off the pass to put this puppy to bed and winning this ball game by 3 points. For the Bluffton Tigers, who will be traveling to Woodland on Friday, looking to go 2-0 in ACAC play. They'll have a couple road games coming up before they host Southern Wells on the 26th of September, which let's go right into Southern Wells. This is their first win in the Blaker era of Southern Wells football. It took them a year and a half for them to get that first win in under this coach. It took them a little over 2 years to get a win for the first time in a while. And Southern Wells, it took them 6 years, or nearly 6 years exactly, to win their first ACAC conference game in forever. And so the Raiders obviously broke a lot of losing streaks on Friday. An upset win on their home opener over the Jay County Patriots, 21-14. And what's amazing about Southern Wells' season so far, their defense has done its job very well for the Southern Wells Raiders. They're holding their opponents to 14.3 points per game. Now, you could look at this and say, well, Elwood isn't the best team out there. Okay, I can see that. Blackhawk Christian, they're still a new program. They're not quite at the powerhouse of all these other 1A schools. Okay, I can see that argument there. But when you hold a 3A school like Jay County to 14 points, I think that's pretty impressive for the Southern Wells Raiders. Obviously, the star of that game was Trey Slusher, their senior quarterback and middle linebacker. He was just recently named as ANEC Football Performer of the Week. Check out our Facebook page and our ANEC website, where we have an article recapping Slusher's Performer of the Week honor and his statistics. But in case you missed his stat line, 5 of 7 completion, 101 passing yards, 71.4 completion percentage, 1 TD pass, 153.3 QBR. And that's not including the fact they had their sophomore backup, Adam Albach, complete a pass for 21 yards. So the Raiders, they threw for 122 yards on 75% completion. On the ground, Slusher, 42 of the team's 47 carries for 172 of the team's 190 rushing yards, and scored both of their rushing touchdowns. Pretty impressive there. On the receiving game, you had a pretty balanced receiving game overall, but Riker Dollar leading the way. He caught a pass for 46 yards. Albach with a touchdown pass for the Raiders. Let's see here. And then tackles, right? Slusher had 6 total tackles, 4 off the assist. You had Dollar with 5 tackles, 2 TFLs. You had another senior on this team in Leland Goodnight with 6 total tackles, 1 TFL. Raiders with 4 sats on the game, 2 coming from Dollar, 2 QB hurries. Dollar with a pass deflection. Albach, the other Albach, the junior, Josh Albach, with a fumble recovery on defense. So it really was a collective team effort overall for the Southern Wells Raiders, winning at home opener in front of their fans. You know, this also snaps a long home losing streak. They had not won at home since October 11th, 2019 against the Heritage Patriots. So the Raiders snapping a lot of losing streaks in the process. They'll have a home game on Friday against West Dell. In fact, Southern Wells has 2 more home games before they travel to Bluffton on the 26th. West Dell is 1-1 in the season. They got blown out by Alexandria in week 1. They shut out Blackhawk Christian in week 2, 42-0. So we have no idea what to expect from West Dell on Friday night. But West Dell, they've had their number against Southern Wells in the past. Last season, they beat them 51-6 at West Dell. But the year prior, Southern Wells only lost by 8 points to West Dell, 14-6. So again, the Raiders have an opportunity here to build a winning streak, if you would. And Southern Wells, if you go back in Southern Wells' history, they have not had a winning streak of any kind since the 2015 season, which was their last winning season at Southern Wells. So if they can get a win like this on Friday night, that would be huge for the Southern Wells Raiders program, who has dealt with a lot of losing, a lot of rebuilding, so to speak. I mean, they had a season canceled in 2020 because of this particular situation with the Raiders program. But when you go back to the Raiders season as a whole, the last time they gave up less than 20 points per game, you have to go back to that 2015 season. So obviously with the Raiders, a lot of success so far on defense. We'll see if they can carry it over to week 4 on Friday. Some other games to watch for this week. So Adams Central's at Jay County. Jets with a 41-13 dominant performance against Muncie Central. Again, Jamison Roach doing his thing at quarterback. The defense doing its job so far, holding teams to 11 points per game. Jay County currently on a 2-game losing streak. Struggled against Newcastle week 2. Obviously, a disappointing loss on Friday in week 3, 21-14. Patriots looking to ride the ship, if you would, get that first conference win of the season, but they've never beaten Adams Central. That's going to be a tough one on Friday night. Woodland hosting Bluffton, as I mentioned earlier. Woodland 1-2, coming off a competitive but tough loss to the Heritage Patriots, who were led in part by Lucas Weber. He had 3 touchdown rushes, if I recall. Heritage 3-0 in the season. Once again, the first time with 3 straight 3-0 starts since the late 90s. Now can the Patriots look to build on that success, go 4-0 on the season, 2-0 conference play. Big matchup a week from now when they travel to Adams Central on the 19th. But first, they got to take care of business in Bern at South Adams. They've had recent success with the Starfires, but this is a team that's had their number beforehand. So this is going to be a competitive game between 2 teams that have talented players. They can make plays on both ends of the field. And this is a South Adams team that definitely needs to get that conference win under their belt. So this should be a competitive game. And don't sleep on the Starfires. I know they're 1-2, but they are a very good football team. All right, let's take a look at what else is on the slate here. CIC play. We take a look at the Central Indiana Conference. 4 teams sitting at 1-0 conference play. Alexandria, Eastbrook, Madison Grant, and Mississauga. For the perspective of the ANEC Sports, we take a look at Eastbrook first. 3-0 start to the season. Another dominant win for Eastbrook against Frankton, 57-0, holding teams to 11 points per game on the season so far. Now Eastbrook's toughest test begins on Friday night when they host Alexandria. This is their home opener, so you know they are going to be fired up for this contest against the Tigers of Alexandria, who have become one of the better teams in the CIC over the last few years. And Alexandria is going to be a team to watch because this is a team that can give you a combination of of a power attack, but also be able to throw the football. Their quarterback in Brady Gast, 6 of 10 completion for 217 yards, 3 TD passes. And then you have their senior running back, Clayton Martin, 11 carries for 85 yards. They shut out Elwood 47-0. So this Alexandria team is going to be a dangerous team. They also picked off 3 passes, so I don't know if that'll be too much of a concern because Eastbrook primarily runs the football. They are not known for throwing the ball as much, but what they do on the ground is going to be a key to watch for Eastbrook. And obviously, look at the Panthers. They ran for 351 yards on 50 carries, and they were led in part of a balanced effort, but they were led in part by Bodie Howe, the senior quarterback and running back and strong safety, 12 carries for 75 yards and a touchdown in that win over Frankton. And then you look at the defensive side, a couple of kids with 3 tackles. They had 2 pits on the defensive side, led by Tate Aravetz and Levi Minor. And so defense is going to be key here on Friday night, as both teams can run the football. Both teams have talented athletes, but what they do in the trenches and what they do on defense is going to be key on Friday night to see who can take control of the CIC, because Eastbrook, I know, is really want to get that conference championship back for the folks in Eastbrook, but it's going to be a tall task with Alexandria, Madison Grant, and Mississauga all in real contention for the conference championship. Madison Grant's another team to watch. They have shut out every opponent so far this year, 159-0. This is the first time in the history of Madison Grant football where they have started the season with 3 straight shutout wins. That's how impressive it is for the Argyles of Madison Grant. They shut out Oak Hill 62-0. This is a team, much like Eastbrook, that they don't throw the ball a lot. They primarily rely on their run game. This is a team that typically relies on their defense. But some impressions coming out of Madison Grant. Dylan Martin completed all 5 of his passes for 100 yards, 1 TD pass, no picks. You had O.J. Blackwell with 87 rushing yards on just 2 carries, 2 touchdowns, and then Caden Simpson with 1 reception for 41 yards. So obviously, when you look at the offense, Madison Grant has plenty of guys that can be explosive on the ground. The Argyle's defense is physical. They're a very talented Madison Grant defense, and that is something for Oak Hill you're gonna have to be concerned about on Friday night, because Oak Hill so far this season, it hasn't been an ideal start for the Golden Eagles of Oak Hill. Had a tough loss to Eastern Greentown in week 1, nearly lost in week 2 against Norwell. And had it not been for a tremendous performance in the fourth quarter, we're talking about Oak Hill starting the season 0-3. So this is not an ideal start. Now coming off a 20-0 loss to Mississauga, they got a lot of areas to clean up on Friday night. And one of which is finding some consistency on offense against a stout defense of Madison Grant. So Oak Hill's going to have a huge challenge on hand on Friday night against their county rivals, the team that beat Oak Hill last year 48-24. Many would say Madison Grant's defense is actually better this year, and some would say the passing game has gotten better. And so far, you can say there's some encouraging signs for Madison Grant being a 1A power this time around in 2025. But keep in mind that Madison Grant is in the same sectional as South Adams. That is something we'll be monitoring over the course of the season, because this South Adams team did beat Madison Grant last year in the sectional championship game. For Mississauga, they are also 3-0 in the season, much like Eastbrook and much like MG. Mississauga also playing stout defense, holding teams to just 4 points per game. The only team that scored anything past their defense is the Marion Giants, with that which they scored 12 points in that process. But in the Oak Hill game, they only threw 6 times, completed 2 passes for 40 yards. They threw a touchdown pass. Their one pass was picked off in the process, but they did run the ball a lot. 42 carries for 228 yards, and most of it came from their talented running back, Elijah Monday, the senior running back, 30 carries for 187 yards, 2 touchdown runs, and then both of their passes went to Callan Quadrer, 2 completions for 40 yards. He also had a touchdown catch in that process. Defensively, a couple names to highlight: Dakota Hill with 3 tackles, 2 TFLs. You had, let's see here, Carson Moricall with 3 tackles, 1 TFL. The aforementioned Elijah Monday with 7 tackles and a TFL. And then their junior guard and tackle, Caden Faust, 6 total tackles, 2 TFLs. They recorded 5 sacks in the process, led by Hill and Faust, 3 QB hurries for Faust, and then 1 interception from Quadrer in the process. But Ole Miss's defense has been really strong so far, and they'll be heavily favored on Friday when they host Frankton, who is still winless. Some other matchups to mention from ANEC Sports: Blackford seeking their first win of the season. They are 0-3 on the season. Not looking so great for Steve Bougier's return to Blackford, but an opportunity to get their first win of the season at Elwood, who is 1-2 on the season. They have not scored since week 1 against Southern Wells. They've been shut out and outscored 95-0 at Tipton and Alexandria. Here's an opportunity for Blackford to get their first win of the season, but a tall task against an Elwood team. Already some confidence from that first week of the season. And that's it for the CIC. Let's see here. Let's take a look at the Northeast 8. Columbia City, East Noble, Leo, DeKalb are off to a 1-0 starts in conference play. And Columbia City, they've won all their games so far, 3-0 this season. They beat Belmont in dominant fashion on Friday, 61-6 at Belmont. Again, with Columbia City, just a stout defensive performance. They're dominating their competition so far, at least since week 1 against Northwood, where it was a close game, which we expected that. Plymouth and Belmont, we knew would be more favorable matchups for Columbia City, and we have seen that so far. And a lot of it with Columbia City, Dave McDevitt, 5-6 passing for 98 yards, 2 touchdowns. Noah McCoy, 2 carries for 73 yards and 2 touchdowns. Gavin Smith doing Gavin Smith things, 3 catches for 75 yards and a touchdown. You also take a look at the defense side, 6 tackles, 1 TFL, another interception for Gavin Smith. Just another astounding performance from him. And also Sam Bean with 4 tackles on defense, 2 TFL. Sam Bean won a very solid lineman on the Columbia City offense and defensive lines for the Eagles. Let's see here. And then also Gavin Smith had 48 rushing yards on 4 carries. I want to make sure I mention that real quick. And also another thing to mention, Jaden Williams 5 rushes for 73 yards and a touchdown run. So they spread the well, if you would, for Columbia City's offense. And this flex bone offense will need that type of balanced offense when they go to Huntington North on Friday to take on the Vikings, a team that is in desperate needs of a win here. They're 0-3 to begin the season. They had 2 close games in weeks 1 and 2 against Eastbrook and Northup. Obviously, week 3 was going to be much more difficult, going to Kindleville to take on the East Noble Knights, and got pounced on Friday at East Noble 39-0. Now they need to get right game for Huntington North on Friday when they host Columbia City, as the Vikings searching for their first win of the season, coming off a 9-win campaign and a sectional championship. Obviously, the Vikings definitely need some help and definitely need to get some offense on the board, needing to get that first win of the season. For East Noble, we mentioned their dominance so far this year. Their defense has been quite stout as well. They're holding teams to just 2.3 points per game, just 1 touchdown in the first half from Snyder, and that is it so far this season for East Noble's defense, who has been dominant so far this year. And when you look at East Noble on Friday against Huntington North, they were doing just about everything you would expect from East Noble on both sides of the ball. Riley Biddle, dominant performance for him at quarterback, 19 of 32 passing for 243 yards, 3 touchdown passes. And then you also have the freshman in Austin Phillips, I believe it is, 10 rushes for 176 yards and a touchdown. He looks like he's going to have a bright future for the East Noble Knights. And then Lucas Nyman, their sophomore, 10 carries for 60 yards. And so there's been a lot of Nyman, a lot of Phillips. Both Austin and Alyx Phillips have had their share of good moments for East Noble. And then the passing game, obviously Alyx Phillips was involved in the passing game, 10 catches for 100 yards and 2 touchdowns. So if your last name was Phillips last Friday, you did a lot of good things against Huntington North. So this is a dangerous offense for East Noble right now, and teams better be taking them seriously if they haven't done so already. Defensively, Austin Phillips with 12 tackles, 2 TFLs. Riley Biddle with 5 tackles and a TFL. Not to mention Ashton Lay with 7 tackles, 2 TFLs. The older Phillips, Alyx Phillips, with 14 total tackles. Again, obviously their fingerprints were all over this entire game at will. Lay with 2 sacks. Another guy that mentions Landon Mills with a sack. Alex Scott with 2 more interceptions, one of the top defensive backs in the entire state. So a lot of things went well for East Noble. They'll have a tougher contest on Friday at DeKalb. This is a much harder DeKalb team than what we've seen in past years. And Ryan Robertson's DeKalb Barons are starting to find some confidence going into this coming Friday. DeKalb coming in at 2-1, 1-0 conference play, following a 40-20 win at New Haven. The Barons showing some good things on both sides of the ball, particularly on the offensive side. Brady Kohler, 21 carries for 100 yards and a touchdown run. Xavier Weiss, I mentioned his name earlier from the Garrett game, continuing to build off of that week 2 game with an even stronger performance, 15 carries for 92 yards and a touchdown run. Obviously, the passing game, very balanced passing game, if you would. Obviously, Xavier Bell is going to get his fair share of looks, but seeing Bowen Meinhardt getting some opportunities there, Zeke Penrod, their tight end, Noah Spears getting some targets. So this is a pretty dangerous DeKalb lineup. Obviously, the passing game would like to be a little bit more consistent, particularly when they play against a team of East Noble with an elite defense. And right now for DeKalb, they're going to have 2 really tough games coming up, at home against East Noble and then at Columbia City. DeKalb looking for their first win against East Noble since 2007. It's been a long time for the DeKalb fans, and they're going to be underdogs once again on Friday night when they host the East Noble Knights. They're going to need a lot of Brady Kohler on Friday night. Brady Kohler was amazing again on both sides of the ball, 9 tackles against New Haven. They're going to need a little bit of Drake Hall up front against the East Noble Knights. They're going to need a little bit of Meinhardt. How about this? How about another guy, Austin Kirkpatrick? We're going to need a little bit of Kirkpatrick getting his fingerprints on this football game. How about another guy, Eli Schwab? He's a name that's starting to creep up in the football landscape of things. And so this is a big, big game for the Cal to see if they belong with the Northeast states. We'll see what they can do against the East Snowball Knights on Friday night. And then I mentioned Columbia City. How about Leo? Leo is 3-0 in the season, 1-0 in conference play, dominant performance at Norwell as you would expect them to, 35-7 at the Castle, as the Lions are 3-0 in the season. They are going to be going into that rivalry game against New Haven, a battle of two East Allen County schools. One team is winless, the other team is undefeated, so two opposites attract, if you would, with one team going the right direction, one team maybe showing some good things, but definitely would like to get some wins on the board, if you would. But for Leo, you got to feel good about the passing game starting to get some confidence. 9-11 passing for 106 yards. He did throw an interception, but they didn't need the passing game as much last Friday in week 3. They did run the ball as you would expect them to, 38 carries for 349 yards. The team, most of it coming from Nathan Foster, 13 carries, 232 yards, 4 touchdown runs for Nate the Greats. And then the passing game, primarily it came from Jackson Klopfenstein, 2 catches for 48 yards. Defensively, some guys to watch again for Leo. We're seeing a little bit of Luke Tackwell contributing in there. You got a freshman, Isaiah Detmers, contributing on the defensive side of the football as a defensive back. You got Paul Woods. He was a hero in week 1 against Bishop Luers. He had 6 tackles, 2 TFLs in Norwell. You also have a couple seniors to mention in Sam Snuffer and Cooper Olson, both with 4 tackles in that contest. Nathan Foster also 1 interception. We tend to forget that Foster's just as good on the defensive side of the football as he is on offense. So we talked about Nate the Great offensively, but Foster handles his job quite well on the defensive side of the football as well. They'll need that defense again on Friday when they hit on the New Haven Bulldogs, a team that I think is better than the record shows. I know New Haven hasn't had the best 1.5 years of football as of late, and it hasn't been the best start for Vance Shear's 10 years head coach, but New Haven is starting to build some confidence, even if they're losing football games, the north side, the Cal games. You got to feel pretty good about showing that New Haven is moving in the right direction and progressing. And so maybe they don't win this week, but if they can keep building their confidence, start to improve each and every day, stacking up the good things with New Haven football, eventually the wins may come. And next week will be an opportunity for New Haven to get that type of win when they host Norwell on the 19th. But right now, the focus is at Leo. Some other things to mention in the Northeast states. I think one other game I should mention here is Belmont at Norwell. Belmont Braves, they have lost 35 in a row, and they're going to need to get that win pretty quickly here because right now with Belmont, it hasn't been a good time for being a Belmont Braves fan right now. And, well, they definitely need to build some confidence going into the halfway mark of the season. They're going to be traveling to Norwell to take on the Norwell Knights, who are also winless. This is the battle on 8 Mile Creek between Belmont and Norwell. Norwell 0-3 in the season. They showed some good things in week 2 at Oak Hill. And obviously, that was a game they feel like they probably should have won, if we're going to be completely honest. That was a game where Norwell played 3 really good quarters. And unfortunately, that 4th quarter really just kind of slipped away from them in the end for the Norwell Knights. But if they can show more of what they did in week 2, I think eventually you're going to see Norwell stacking a couple wins here and there, build some confidence going into the playoffs. I like Norwell's chances on paper. I do like Norwell's chances on paper if they can get the defense to stop the run of Belmont, and if Norwell can get some points on the board. Just getting a couple touchdowns could go a long way for Norwell to build some confidence going into the halfway mark of the season, or they have an opportunity to even get another win next week at New Haven. That's the Northeast 8. Northeast Corner Conference looks like this. So division play gets underway this week for most teams in the Northeast Corner Conference. And so for this Friday, Angola's at West Noble for the big school, Eastside at Cherubusco for the small school, Fairfield's at Culver Academies. That's a non-conference game. Garrett at Lakeland for the big school, Osceola Grace at Fremont. That's a non-conference game. and then Prairie Heights at Central Noble. That is a small school divisional game. Two games I want to mention first, and that's Angola at West Noble and Eastside at Churubusco. Let's start off with Angola at West Noble. Angola coming into this game with a record of 2-1 on the season. Again, with defense, it seems to be a theme with some of these teams off to a good start, is that the defense has done its part really well so far. And that's the same for Angola last week against Fremont, where they basically left no doubts for the folks in Angola, where the Hornets shut out the Fremont Eagles 34-0. And dare I need to remind you that the Angola Hornets had a good dose of Hawk Hasselman on last Friday night. 21 carries, 131 yards, 3 touchdowns. And then Brady Ravis, the new sheriff in town and quarterback, 11 of 17 completions for 115 yards for the Hornets. He did have a pick, but that's here and there. The point is that the Hornets are starting to build some good confidence on both sides of the football. Defense has done his job, and I know that's something Andy Thomas is always known for at Angola. Also, want to mention his son, Alyx Thomas, 89 yards on 4 catches. Good to see Alyx Thomas getting involved in the passing game for the Hornets. And let's see here. Defensively, so far, Thomas doing his part on the defense side as a middle linebacker, 5 tackles for him. Got Tyler Ruppel. We know him from the basketball court. 5 total tackles for him. You got Hawk Hasselman also doing his part as strong safety with 8 tackles, 5 solo, in fact. Another senior for the Hornets, and Keithan Duncan, 6 tackles. A freshman, Owen Shull, with 6 tackles. And then a senior, Lucas Lentz, with 5 tackles. 2 sacks for the Hornets in that game against Fremont, led by 1 sack from Eric Nielsen. 2 pass deflections from Ruppel. And Hasselman also doing his thing as someone that leads the way in kickoffs. 317 yards on 6 kickoffs. So Hawk Hasselman can do just about anything but the kitchen sink for the Angola Hornets. But a big matchup on Friday at West Noble against a Chargers team that I gotta imagine that loss against Eastside on Friday, it's got to be a bad taste to their mouth, because they felt like they had this game in the bag when they scored that touchdown, take the lead in the fourth quarter, and then immediately after that, literally the next play is a 94-yard kickoff return for senior Colton Crothers. And that's how Eastside wins the game. Just kind of a tough break for West Noble last Friday, and as the Chargers look to bounce back when they host the Angola Hornets. Schisler obviously will need to be Trey Schisler once again. He has been one of their best players on the offensive side of the football this year. He had 12 of 20 passing for 180 yards, 2 touchdowns, 1 pick on the passing game. Schisler also had 17 rushes for 17 yards. They'll need Schisler to be involved in the offense all around for the Chargers. They only ran for 52 yards on the ground last Friday, and that's something that's going to have to pick up if the Chargers are going to have success this week against the Angola Hornets, who have a very stout defense of their own, as you would expect them to. They'll need a little bit of Trevor Steele in the passing game, 5 catches for 81 yards. Would like to see Mikhail Bottles do his thing. He had 55 yards reception, 55 yards receiving on 3 catches, 1 touchdown pass. 1 touchdown catch. Same for Steele. He had a 1 touchdown catch as well. And then on defense for the West Noble Chargers, Xavier Yates. We talked a lot about the Yateses at West Noble, but Xavier Yates had a monster performance on that side of the field on Friday. 16 tackles against Eastside, 8 solo, 8 assist tackles. A very impressive game for Xavier Yates. Lucas Conway with 7 tackles. You've got a Limerick and Braden Limerick with 6 total tackles. You got another senior, Peyton Franklin, with 6. Bottles with 6 tackles, 1 TFL. Ethan Yates, the junior, with 9 tackles. And then another junior in Trenton Dean Henson. He also had 6 tackles. Bottles with a sack, Steele the pass deflection. Parts with the sophomore Brogan Parts with a fumble recovery for the Chargers. And then obviously Nefty Silva doing Nefty Silva things on special teams for West Noble. It may come down to special teams this week against a very stout Angola defense on Friday night. Good news is that it is at home, and West Noble tends to feast at home. And so we'll see if the Chargers' home cooking can carry them to victory lane, or do the Angola Hornets have enough steam to get their first conference win of the season. And then we get to our NECC football game of the week, at least one of our 2 NECC football games of the week. and that is Eastside and Cherubusco. It's a meeting that dates back to 1965. I think the series is 36-25 in favor of Cherubusco. Eastside, they have dominated this division for several years. In fact, in the last 11 years since the division's returned in 2014, 91% of small school division championships were decided by the winner of this exact between Eastside and Cherubusco. The only time in which the winner of the Eastside Cherubusco game did not win the small school division outright came in 2017. Cherubusco won that 2017 matchup. I believe it was a close game that year in 2017. It was, actually, I take that back. It was actually a blowout. 28-9 Busco at Busco in week 4. And then Cherubusco later on, week 7, they were favored to win against Central Noble. They lost that game at CN 1917. Some Busco fans perceived it as, it was kind of a controversial ending, if you would. I'm not going to get involved in that, but the point being is it was a heartbreaking loss for Cherubusco. And then Central Noble the following week, they lost the Eastside in week 8, 21-7, to allow all three of these teams to win a share of the small school division. That's the only time where the small school division title was not crowned to the team that won that Eastside Cherubusco matchup. Last season, Eastside, having won the small school division every year since I believe it was since 2019. Yes, since 2019, Eastside had won that small school division every year up to last year. They lost that game at Eastside last year, 24-12, to give Busco their first divisional championship. Essentially, they won their first divisional championship since 2018. Now Busco looks to repeat as small school division champions. Eastside looking to reclaim that small school division. And you have to like the way in which Eastside has gone about this season. They have improved on both sides of the football, especially on the defensive side of the ball. They had their struggles last year defensively against both Adams Central and West Noble, and that has seen a seismic improvements from last season alone. Obviously, the development of Joe Richmond has been incredible for the Eastside Blazers, continuing his precision in the passing game, but also rushing very well. He had 189 rushing yards on 29 carries for 2 touchdowns, on top of his 53 passing yards, 1 TD pass on 67% completion. You know, Eastside's got a lot of heroes on this team. Noah Dove, we know for him being a running back as a sophomore, but he also can do his job as a defensive back. 9 tackles so far for Noah Dove. They have Sam Pittman, their tight end. He has 6 tackles for 2 TFLs. You've got their senior wide receiver, Jake Worsler. He was the leader in receptions in the passing game for Eastside, but he also has 7 tackles and 1 TFL for the Blazers. You've got a sophomore in Gage Fogel with 10 tackles. And then Ty Siebert, we know that Siebert name quite well in Eastside lore. 6 tackles, 2 TFLs for him. And then 1 interception on defense for Bo Martin, a sophomore cornerback for the Eastside Blazers. So obviously for Eastside, the defense is going to have to do really well in the Ween T offense against Cherubusco. This Busco team honestly could easily start the season 3-0. That is how much better Cherubusco is from last year. A team that started last season 0-3 and won 4 in a row in route of a small school division championship. Cherubusco has already improved leaps and bounds from last year alone. They dominated Bremen in week 1. They had 2 very close losses the past 2 weeks, one of which came to Lakeland 14-12 at Lakeland, and then lost at Garrett's 17-7. That's a tough loss for Cherubusco, looking to get a quality win against a Garrett team that was desperate for some wins after 2 tough losses to begin the season. But there are some good things for Busco coming out of that game. Obviously, for Brody and Bryce Lawrence, that combo has been dangerous for Cherubusco so far this year. And that's got to be something to keep an eye on for Eastside, is watch out for that quarterback wide receiver duel of Brody and Bryce Lawrence. And Bryce Lawrence in particular, he can turn on the jets, not only as a receiver, but also in kickoff and punt returns. He can be dangerous. And it always seems like Cherubusco, they always have 1 or 2 guys that always can run like he is the Flash, if you would, always zooming across the field and creating havoc on the ground for the Cherubusco Eagles. And that's the thing that's so dangerous about the Ween T offenses, is they're very deceptive when it comes to the way that Busco runs their offense. And so if you have a missed assignment and if you over pursue a particular assignment defensively, they can make you pay. And that's something that makes Cherubusco very dangerous. You also have two running backs in Carson Tonkel and Grant Severs, two very solid seasons for both Tonkel and Severs on the ground for Busco. You also got Cameron Lattimore, a very solid all-around player for Busco as a slot back, strong safety. Their defense has been very strong as well for the Cherubusco Eagles. And then on defense, and one guy I want to make sure I mention here, right? Obviously, Cam Lattimore, monster performance last week against Garrett, 20 tackles, 2.5 TFLs, right? And then you also got Jack Holstenbeck. We need to make sure we mention him, the senior, with 15 tackles, 13 assist tackles for him. And then you also have Quinn Blake with 12 tackles, 2.5 TFLs. But the one guy that can be the difference maker this week is not only a difference maker offensively, but an impactful player defensively, is their senior, Wes Ott. He is a disruptor on the defense side of the football. He makes everything so much different for opposing offenses to read. And to me, the presence of Wes Ott is a game changer for Cherubusco, because what Ott can do on top of Lattimore, on top of Tonkel, on top of Severs and Holstenbeck, the Lawrence kids, Blake, right? Aspie, all these guys at Busco, Wes Ott really is the ultimate game changer on the defensive front for Cherubusco. And if Eastside's going to win this game at all, they have got to contain Wes Ott, because to me, he can be the difference between a win or a loss in this football game. He is that much of a difference maker. And obviously, he's athletic, because we have seen what Wes Ott can do as someone that's performed in shot and puts and discus for Cherubusco's track and field team. So we know he's an athlete just from that alone. But his football skills are quite astonishing, to say the least. But the one thing on offense for Cherubusco is they have got to take care of the football. That's one thing that has kind of bit them the butt the past few years, is they have not been able to play clean football for 4 quarters. And that's still an issue right now for Cherubusco, who turned the ball over 3 times against Garrett. And that's something that's got to be concerning a little bit for Paul Say and the Cherubusco Eagles, is they got to take care of the football. Whoever can play clean football and which team can run the football best, whoever can win the battle in the trenches, to me, I think those are things that will decide this game on Friday night, because both teams love to run the football. Both teams love to play a physical brand of old school football. Which team can control the physicality and the pace of game, I think, to me, is the winner of this football game. And remember, the winner of this game wins the small school division in the NECC 91% of the time. So the winner of this game has a very, 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 very high probability of winning the small school division. There's a lot of things in life that you can't predict 91% of the time. Apparently, the NECC small school division is the only time that I can recall where you can predict something right 91% of the time. And apparently, the small school division is that case. Some other games to watch: Fairfield at Culver Academy. A tough loss for Fairfield week 3 at Jimtown, 29-28. An opportunity for Fairfield to go 3-0 in the season. Just tough loss in the end against the Jimmies, a team that desperately needed this win for them to avoid an 0-3 start, really get things going for the Jimmies. And unfortunately for Fairfield, just couldn't quite get it done in the end. The Falcons bounce back against Culver Academies on the road. They've had success against CMA in recent years. But again, Culver Academies, they are going to need some wins on the board as well. They're 0-3. But here's an opportunity for Fairfield to bounce back and continue their winning ways going into divisional play next week when they host West Snowball. Some other games to watch for this week: Garrett is at Lakeland. It's a big game in the big school division. Lakeland showing some confidence on Friday at Prairie Heights, 46 win for the Lakeland Lakers. Brady Holbrook Company looking to go 1-0 in big school division play against Garrett's. They're going to need a lot of Brady Holbrook. He threw for 354 yards passing, 14-19 completion, 3 touchdown passes. He also had a touchdown run in the process. They're going to need a lot of Keenan Royal on Friday. Those two have to be stellar if they're going to win this game on Friday night. The running game got better this past week, 181 rushes on 29 carries, led in part by 2 touchdown runs from the senior Dylan Bateman in that process. A very balanced rushing attack for the Lakers. Also, Levi Cook, a name to watch is Levi Cook, not only the wide receiver, but also the outside linebacker. He is a game changer at linebacker for the Lakeland Lakers. He's going to have his fingerprints all over that game on Friday night. Another one to watch is a junior in, I believe it's Briar Allshouse, excuse me. He had 8 tackles against Prairie Heights, 2 at TFLs in that contest. 4 sacks for Lakeland's defense against Prairie Heights. They also had a pick from Keenan Royal, but they're going to need a lot of Royal and a lot of Holbrook for Lakeland to have an opportunity to win against Garrett's. And then for the Yarra Railroaders, they're going to need that run game to get going. And it showed some good things last time around against Churubusco with 176 rushing yards. Alex Guzman, 11 carries, 116 yards, 2 TDs. Guzman, to me, he is the difference maker on the ground. If they can get Guzman involved, remember, the Goose can always go loose on any football game. They need Alex Guzman to play well. Once again, if the Garrett offense can get moving against Lakeland. We know the defense will do its job. Brayden Newsbond with 10 tackles to lead Garrett's, 2 TFLs, 5 TFLs actually for Aiden Hunt to lead in that statistic there for Garrett's. And then they had 2 pits from Guzman and then Caden Bush, respectively. Garrett's defense will do his job, but can the offense generate enough points? And then lastly, Osceola Grace at Fremont. Fremont will be favored there. Prairie Heights at Central Noble. Both teams have not had a good start to the season. Prairie Heights showed some good moments a little bit against Whitco and Bronson. Central Noble was competitive in the first half against LaVille. Not so much after that. Central Noble really needs to build some momentum right now, because right now there hasn't been a lot of good things going in Central Noble's favor right now. This is the opportunity for CN to build some good things. Same for Prairie Heights. But I think the Panthers have been a little bit more competitive this year, but both teams in dire needs of getting that first win of the season under their belts. All right, here, let's pick up the pace just a little bit here. Take a look at the NECC. For Elkhart, the Lions currently sitting at 2-1, 1-0 in conference play, following a dominant performance South Bend, Washington. They'll be hosting South Bend Riley on Friday, who's also 2-1 this season. They lost badly to Penn 49-6, but even then, Riley hasn't really been tested yet. So this is really Riley's first true test with that matchup with Penn, and now the matchup at Elkhart. Elkhart opportunity to go 3-1 going into the matchup at New Prairie in week 5, and then St. Joe looming in week 6. Northern Lakes Conference. 1-0 starts for Mishawaka, Northwood, Warsaw, and Plymouth. Mishawaka's win coming in dramatic fashion last week, 38-34 against the Concord Minutemen. One of our games of the week will be at Northwood, taking on the Northwood Panthers, who currently sit at 2-1 on the season. They're coming off a 36-7 win at a much improved Wawasee squad for the Northwood Panthers. And this is a team that is scoring points at will so far, averaging 37 points per game for the Northwood Panthers. That will be tested this week against Mishawaka and that wishbone, flexbone offense, if you would. But for Northwood's success, they're going to hinge on the run, just like Mishawaka, and they're going to need quite a bit of the combo of Jeffrey Esch, who had a really good game at Wawasee, 113 rushing yards, 13 carries, 2 TD runs, as well as a little bit of Brady Weaver on the ground for Northwood. And if you look at the defense side of the ball, a couple names to mention here. The senior strong safety, Hayden Lechleitner, I apologize. 7 tackles there for him. You have the junior for Northwood, Ethan Miller, with 9 tackles, 1 TFL for Northwood. 2 sacks for Northwood. They also had a pick against Wawasee. Again, against Mishawaka, they're going to have to watch out for the rush, the power run attack of Mishawaka, the wishbone offense. That's something Mishawaka has been known for many years, and that is going to be something we'll highlight when we preview Northwood and Mishawaka later this week. Some other games to mention here. Warsaw 2-1. They had a dominant win against Goshen last week. They will have another quality opportunity to go 4-1, and they'll be favored this week against Wawasee at home. Concord will host Northridge at Mishawaka, which is going to be weird because I believe Concord just played at Mishawaka last week. So now Mishawaka will be the home site for Concord when they face Northridge, who lost a close contest, 24-21, at the hands of Plymouth. Plymouth will be hosting Goshen as the Rockies look to extend their winning streak to 2 going into week 5. Looking at the Indiana Northern States Conference, and we primarily talked about Tippy Valley, Bremen, And Jimtown, Vikings 2-1 this season, suffer a setback in the hands of Hamilton Heights last Friday, 35-19. They'll look to bounce back when they host a very powerful Notch Redskins, who are led by one of the top running backs in the history of Indiana high school football, in Miles McLaughlin. That is going to be a tall task this week for the Valley Vikings. Bremen got their first win of the season last week against Boone Grove in a shutout win. A rivalry game this week at LaVille against the Lancers, who shredded Central Noble to pieces in the second half, 42-9. LaVille and Bremen should be a good one this week at LaVille. And then the Jimmies with a nice first win under their belt against Fairfield. They'll have a home game against John Glenn this week, a team that's 1-2 and hasn't won since week 1. So Jimtown looking to go into a 2-game winning streak entering week 5. But right now, Tippy Valley with a setback, and Bremen, Jimtown showing some promise after a tough start to their respective seasons. And then we take a look at the SAC. Northrop, Bishop Dwayne, Homestead, Carroll, Snyder, all 1-0 in conference play, which every game against SAC competition is a conference game. I don't care their divisions. They are all conference games. Northrop, with their first 3-0 start since 1977, 25-16 winner against the Northside Legends. It wasn't the typical Northrop performance for the Bruins, but the defense did its job. And that's something that we have not seen from Northrop basically since ANEC Sports was formed in 2018. So the fact that Northrop is finally getting some defensive stops on a consistent level is a very good sign for the Northrop Bruins. Obviously, David Callison had his struggles, but still did his part when needed to. 14-19 passing for 204 yards and a touchdown pass. You had Quay Gifford with 5 catches for 70 yards, 2 touchdown runs. Guilford also had a catch for 37 yards. Guilford 5 carries for 70 yards and 2 touchdowns. Both key in Northrop's victory. I said that in my preview, I thought that Northrop's D Hode was due for a big game, or at least an impactful performance. And just for the small amount of work he showed, Hode was very impactful for Northrop on the offensive side of the football. For the Bruins, you also had a sophomore wide receiver in Manitz Wild, 6 catches for 91 yards for the Northrop Bruins. But again, the defense stole the show for the Bruins. You had, let's see here, senior corner, middle linebacker Elijah Collins with 8 tackles, Guilford with 7 tackles, Hode with 7 tackles. You also had another sophomore in Lenny Underwood with 8 tackles. You had a sophomore defensive lineman in Cornelius Jackson with 8 tackles, 2 TFLs for him, 2 sacks for the Bruins. Been a good start for Northrop's pass rush. Also, 6 pass deflections. That's something we don't talk enough about. It's Northrop's defense in the secondary. So a really good start for Northrop, really silencing the critics, even myself. And Northrop, best start since 1977. Can they give Homestead a scare, if not even a win, on Friday against the Homestead Spartans, who are finding ways to win football games at Homestead? It hasn't been pretty, but the Spartans getting the job done so far. 30-10 win at Southside last week. Can the Spartans defense propel Homestead to 3-1 against Northrop? We shall see. I know one game that everybody's going to be talking about will be Carroll hosting Bishop Dwayne. Carroll dominating Concordia for the first win of the season, 52-7 Concordia. Whole lot of Dave Freisinger and Caden Van Pelt for Carroll, but it's going to come down to their play up front for Carroll. Can the Chargers front line hold its own against an elite defense of Bishop Dwayne? You look at Carroll on the defense side of the ball, you're going to be seeing a lot of these guys stepping up for the Chargers. They're going to be a team by committee on that side of the ball for the Carroll Chargers. And so it's it's a pretty young defense, if you would, on some level for Carroll, but it's a defense that's pretty talented too. And so I think it's going to be a good test for Carroll, what they can do up front against Bishop Dwayne, a team that's currently sitting at 2-1, dominant win against Wayne, coming off a win prior against St. Francis de Sales, 31-15, 46 win last week against Wayne on the road. Dwayne, led in part by Colin Campbell with 8 carries for 108 yards and 2 touchdowns. for the Dwayner Saints. Again, the defense for Dwayner has been sensational so far, giving up just 6 points per game. That's going to have to be the case on Friday night against a stout Carroll squad with a whole lot of weapons. Even though they graduated a lot of talent from last year, Carroll's still loaded with talent all across the board. One name to watch for Carroll that I think we should highlight here is their senior defensive tackle, who also plays in for Bishop Dwayner, and that is Casey Piper for Dwayner. 9 tackles, 3 TFLs. I think this could be this type of game for Casey Piper to have a big showing, and also have 2 sacks against Wayne. He might be important for Dwayner this week against the Carroll Chargers. That's a game to watch for the SAC folks. And then some other games to watch: Concordia, Northside. Northside will look to bounce back. This will be a game they'll be favored. Bishop Lures of Southside. It hasn't been a great start for Lures offense. Their worst start since 2006. Lures offense will need to get going soon. They'll have an opportunity to do so at Southside. Wayne and Snyder will be favored as well against the Wayne Generals. And then lastly, we take a look at the Three Rivers Conference. Right now, McConaughey, Lewis Cass, Manchester, and Rochester all sitting at 2-0 in conference play, and particularly for us at NECC Sports. Manchester and Rochester, 2-0 in conference play. The Squires with a dominant performance against the Wabash Apaches last week, 47-19. The offense continuing to dominate, if you would. And particularly for the Squires, they absolutely feasted on the ground. They absolutely destroyed the Wabash interior line. They ran for 340 yards on 39 carries, 7 touchdowns. They scored essentially all their touchdowns on the ground. And they were led in part by Maddox Greer, 8 carries, 113 yards, 3 touchdowns on the ground, as well as their senior wide receiver and strong safety, who actually had a dominant performance on the ground for the Squires, and that is Reese Gardy. He also ran for 100 yards and 3 touchdowns. Both Greer and Gardy had 3 touchdowns on the ground for the Manchester Squires, but they'll have a tough test coming on Friday at Lewis Cass, taking on the Lewis Cass Kings, who are also 2-1. They are coming off a dramatic win in Peru, 34-32, county rivalry win for Lewis Cass, who's starting to find some offensive showing after a tough week 1 game at Pioneer, shredded Northfield's defense, and then pulled off an impressive win against the Peru Bengal Tigers. This could be a shootout between Manchester and Lewis Cass down in Cass County. And then for the Zebras, they're 2-1 on the season, 2-0 in conference play. They shut out the Whitco Wildcats 47-0 for the Zebras, who are holding their opponents to just 2.3 points per game for the Rochester Zebras. Although, let's be honest here, Rochester really hasn't been tested yet. They played 2 winnable games, and then they lost a close one to Tippy Valley 7-2. They're going to be favored once again this week when they host the Wabash Apaches. And with Rochester in particular, I would expect the Zebras to really pound the ball on the ground. If they watched any film of that Wabash-Manchester game, I would expect the Zebras to feed the ball a lot and feed the ball evenly across the board on the ground. For the Zebras, Brant Beck is one name to watch for the Zebras. He ran for 112 yards on 13 carries. Did not have a touchdown, but he might be due for one this week against the Apaches. And then defensively for the Zebras, one name to watch, again, also Beck with 9 tackles, 3 TFLs. But another one I think we should note here for the Zebras is their senior defensive end in Matthew Crossland, who had 2 TFLs for the Zebras. So expect the Zebras to dominate this one, but this is a game to get them ready for that Lewis Cass game next week, which would be a key matchup for the Three Rivers Conference. Some other games to watch for week 4. Northfield and Southwood both are winless to begin the season. They're one of only 3 teams in the TRC with winless records, all 3 coming from Wabash County, coincidentally. One of these teams is going to get a win here, Northfield or Southwood. Northfield had the edge last year. We'll see if Southwood can finally end their losing streak, which is right now currently at 14 in a row. Northfield's lost 5 in a row. Somebody's got to get a win here on Friday night down in Southwood. And then Whitco's at McConaughey. McConaughey, one of the favorites to win the Three Rivers Conference. They have shredded defense so far this year, averaging 48 points per game. This is going to be a tough one right now for Whitco. We had a great first game, an encouraging second game, a tough third game against Rochester, and this looks like it's going to be a challenging game on Friday night when they take on the Braves of Maconaquah, which I believe they're on the road for this one. Yes, they're at Maconaquah on Friday. And then lastly, let's take a look at the Blackhawk Christian Braves and Marion Giants. I forgot them last time around, but I want to make sure I briefly mention the Braves of Fort Wayne Blackhawk. 1-2 record. They had a tough loss to Westdale, 42-0. They're at Shenandoah. They're also 1-2, but this is going to be a tall task for Blackhawk Christian as they look to continue to build their program along the way. This is only their third year of varsity football, so they're still learning how to win football games on a consistent level. But hopefully for Blackhawk Christian, they look to continue to build some confidence going into next week's matchup at South Adams, which will be a very challenging matchup for Blackhawk Christian's defense. And then lastly, we take a look at the NCC with Marion. They are currently 1-2 on the season. They've lost their last 2 games after a very promising first week at Southside, 48-42. Lost a tough one. It's Powerhouse Center Grove, 55-0. They'll be hosting Lebanon. Lebanon's 2-1. They're averaging 33 points per game, so this is going to be a tough matchup for Marion's defense. It's giving them 45 points per game. Can Marion's defense hold their own against Lebanon? That is going to be a challenge. But obviously, Marion's schedule will start to line up a little bit starting next week when they host Muncie Central. And then you got Kokomo the week after, who is currently winless. So they'll have opportunities to win some football games for the Marion Giants, but it may not be this week. And so that is going to do it for the opening drive. And now I shift over to my interview with the head football coach of the Eastside Blazers, Alyx Brandewie. As Coach Brandewie and the Eastside Blazers, they are currently 2-1 as they look to go 1-0 in the small school division for Coach Brandewie and the Blazers, who look to avenge their loss from last year against the Bustle Eagles. So enjoy my interview with Coach Brandewie of the Blazers. Joining me is the head football coach of the Eastside Blazers, Alyx Brandewie, as his team goes into week 4, 2-1 on the season. A much better start compared to last season. We'll talk about that in a matter of moments. But Coach, just your initial thoughts on the start of the season so far for Eastside.
Yeah, it's been a good start to the year for us. It's been a lot of kind of the what we saw towards the end of last year, where we felt like we were taking some steps in the right direction, and then won a couple tournament games, ended up playing in a sectional final, and it kind of carried over into our off season and into our summer. And it's kind of just been a slow building process throughout. We had so many young guys playing in so many spots a year ago that to start this year with a little more momentum, a win in week 1, felt like we played okay in week 2, made some mistakes and got beat, and then come back in week 3 with a big win is really kind of, to me anyway, is kind of the result of that maturation process for a lot of guys who played a lot of snaps a year ago as freshmen and sophomores.
Mm-hmm. And you look at the schedule, this is not an easy schedule to begin a season here. Playing Woodland on the road, always a tough place to play. Even though you won convincingly in that contest, and then you got 2 big home games against Adams Central, West Noble. Felt like you had some moments in that game against Adams Central where you showed some good coming out of that game. And then the West Noble game, probably your best moment of the season up to this point. Yep. You're down late in the game, and then you had that 94-yard kickoff return from one of your seniors, and that would be Colton Crothers, that put your team up in front for good. Just talk about the moment to be able to kind of flip the script, if you would, against a really good West Noble team that's kind of had your number in recent years.
Yeah, it's a very good West Noble football team. Coach Mayhorter and that entire program, they do a fantastic job, and they're very, very talented. They're going to win a lot of football games this year. But we go down 24-20, and really the word all week was we just need to finish. We felt like, the week before against Adams Central, we had some chances to make some plays in the fourth quarter and just didn't get the job done and ended up losing a 2-score game and just didn't really finish the way we would have liked. And so the word all week was finish. And you go down 4 with, I think there was about 4.5 minutes left, something like that. And that we'd been working on kickoff return and being a little more decisive and a little more better with the execution part of that than we had been. And they kick the ball to Colton, and he does it exactly the way he's coached to do it. And then he's a fantastic athlete and makes a play. And from there, you kind of get all that momentum back. You regain the lead. And we're fortunate from there, you go up 27-24, and on their first play back with the ball, we get an interception. And so you have 2 back-to-back really big momentum plays from kids competing their butts off and making a play. And then from there, you have the ball in the offense's hand, and you get the opportunity to do what we talked about all week, which is to finish, right? You got to go finish. You got to get a couple first downs. West Noble they're going to fight, scratch, claw everything they got to try to get the ball back. So we got to be good, and we got to execute right now. We did. We got a couple first downs, and we're able to kneel out the clock. So just an all-around fantastic effort in all three phases, and it required a bunch of kids to make plays, in the second half of that game to get it done.
Yeah, it's a team, and you look about it, this Eastside team. It's a young defense, but it's a hardworking Eastside defense, and it's a proving defense nonetheless. That's the thing about Eastside. These kids always play hard. They always play with physical blue collar football. That's what Eastside has always been known for, being hardworking kids, blue collar kids. And you look at this team, even on the offense side of the ball, a lot of returnees back with Joe Richmond quarterback, Noah Dove coming as running back and defensive back. You're averaging 6.4 yards per carry. You do run the ball a lot, but the passing game has shown some good things as well for the Eastside Blazers, who seem to be getting better each and every week. Who are some other guys that we don't talk enough about that maybe that you've seen a lot of improvement from last year to this year?
Yeah, so I think one of the people I would start with is Sam Pittman. Sam plays tight end and defensive end for us, and he started at linebacker as a sophomore, played some tight end as a sophomore. A year ago, dealt with some injuries kind of throughout the course of the year, where he was pretty limited and really only played on offense for us. And to watch the way that kid worked, every step of the way, all off season long, he's turned himself into a pretty darn good football player. He had his 1.5 sacks Friday night, another tackle for a loss, and has caught a touchdown already this year. And really, kind of maybe the most unheralded part of Sam, because you see those stat plays like that. He's a fantastic blocker as a tight end as well. It's really like being able to play with a sixth offensive lineman that you can throw the ball to and can do some stuff with it after the catch. So his growth, when I got here, he was a sophomore that was still figuring some things out, and now he's a senior. And to see where he's at now is just a tremendous credit to him. The amount of work and effort and time that he's poured into kind of making the best version of himself that he could. I couldn't be prouder of him. And he's just one of those examples, right? I mean, there's 3-4 more, but he's done a fantastic job, and he's been really good so far this year.
Yep, as Alyx Brandewie and the Eastside Blazers, they prepare for a big matchup coming up at Churubusco this Friday in one of our NECC games of the week. This is a rivalry that's been around since 1965, so this is 60 years strong between these two longtime rivals. And with Churubusco, you know what to expect. They run that wing T offense, run a lot of deception. It's very difficult to defend and prepare for that type of offense. And with Busco, they got a lot of kids that play with a lot of speed with Brody Lawrence, Bryce Lawrence, that quarterback wide receiver combo there. You got Grant Sievers there, Carson Tonko's there for Busco. They're doing a really good job on the ground. And then one guy I want to mention is Wes Ott, and what he does up front is a game changer for Churubusco as a tight end, and then what he does up front, just a disruptor defensively and whatnot. They could easily be 3-0. They're 1-2 right now, but they had 2 really close losses to Lakeland and Garrett. So coming up on Friday, you got a big matchup against Busco. What's the initial impressions with Busco this year?
Yeah, you're spot on. I mean, you know what you're going to get. Those kids are going to play hard. Coach Sade and his staff do a fantastic job of getting their guys to go out and play like their hair's on fire. And we've told our guys, we're telling our guys all week, you better match their intensity. You better match their physicality, because when you play Busco, they're going to bring that. So you better be ready for it, or you're going to get kind of overwhelmed there at the start of the game. And we saw that a year ago. We gave up a kickoff return on the opening kickoff, and then we turned the ball over shortly thereafter, and their physicality, their intensity from the start of the game kind of overwhelmed us, and it was kind of hard for us to dig our way back in at that point, or claw our way back in at that point. So you better be ready for that. And I couldn't agree with you more. The Ott kid's a fantastic football player, offense, defense. He's a disruptor. You use the perfect word for it. You better know where he is. You better know who's going to block him or who's responsible for him, or he can cause some problems. But I think they got 3, 4, 5 guys that you better be aware of. You better know where they are and what they're doing. The Sievers kid runs hard at fullback, and when they get the ball to any one of a handful of guys on their jet sweep stuff, that thing can get to the perimeter, and if you don't turn it back inside, you're going to watch a guy in a gold helmet run down the sideline and score. So it's really important for us to be disciplined, really, really important for us to make sure that we match their physicality, their intensity early, and to just focus on doing our job. Just do your job, run the next play, and just understand that when you play Churubusco, it's going to be a 4-quarter fight. So you can't take a play off. You can't take a snap or anything off because they're going to bring it. So it's a fun challenge for us. It really demands the best out of us as coaches and as players. You have to be at your best. I have a tremendous amount of respect for Coach Sade. So we're looking forward to it. It's going to be a fantastic football game. Just ready to go see how things shake out for us.
And this Churubusco team, they won the division last year as a result of that win at Eastside last year, 24-12. Coach, this is your third year at Eastside, and you came into a winning program under Todd Mason that won their couple sectional championships, made it all the way to semi-state back in 2021. So this is a program that's familiar with success, familiar with expectations, and over the last several years, really since the divisions came back in 2014, it's always been, for the most part, Eastside and Churubusco competing for the small school division. Can you speak on behalf of the growth of the Eastside program since you came in as head football coach just 3 years ago?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, when I came in, I kind of knew I was walking into a program that had been very successful and where the standard of excellence was going to be pretty high. And, year one, we were able to win a conference championship and got beat by Lures, and they go on to win a state title. A year ago, we felt like we had some real growing pains and some things we needed to grow up on and get better on throughout the course of the year. And towards the end of the year, started playing a little bit better football and were eventually able to make it to a sectional championship game. And for the second year in a row, got eliminated by the team that goes on to win a state championship. But that's what Eastside football is supposed to be all about, and that's what we make it all about. Like, you want to play in games for trophies, you get the opportunity to play in games for trophies. Given the track record with Eastside and Churubusco, we feel like, if we're able to have success on Friday night, that would put us in a pretty good position to win the small school division again this year. Obviously, there's plenty of games left to be played. We're not even getting close to declaring anything or nothing of that sort. But if you can go to Churubusco and find a way to get a win, you have to feel like you're doing some things the right way and you're probably trending the right direction. So it's kind of been a steady growth since I got here over the course of 2.5 years. And we feel like we're really kind of starting to put it all together in a way that allows us to really be competitive on a Friday night. This past week was a pretty good example. We got some things done in all 3 phases and kind of see where the next step is from there. But it's been a steady period of growth. There's been some hiccups and some speed bumps along the way for sure. But I'm pretty fired up about where we're at right now. And I'm excited for Friday night because it's going to be a good one.
It will indeed, down in Victor Field in Churubusco. One of the top matchups in all of Northeast Indiana is this matchup that very likely could decide the small school division. We don't know exactly for sure, but Eastside Churubusco, big matchup on Friday night in Turtletown. Coach, do you have a final message leading up to this game before we let you go?
I appreciate the opportunity to come on and talk with you. Like I said, that we're fired up for this one. This should be one heck of a football game. I think both of these teams are chomping at the bit to go play on a Friday night because when Eastside and Churubusco get together, it's usually a pretty physical, pretty good football game. So we're going to show up, try to be prepared as we can. We know Churubusco is going to do the same, and we'll let the chips fall where they may.
That indeed. So Eastside at Churubusco on Friday night. Good luck to you, Coach, as you prepare for the Busco Eagles.
Thanks, Sam. I appreciate it.